Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-anbiya wa man wa'ula. Is it okay if I ask some of the brothers who are intending to listen to just come forward a little bit? I put perfume on before I came, so it's okay. You can come a bit closer if you want. And for those of you that are listening at home, there's slides with this, which will be streamed on, I understand, the Masjid's YouTube channel. So we've got about an hour or so, and we're going to today talk about physical health, and next week, inshallah, we'll talk about mental health. I'm really happy, Zakariya khair to the Masjid, for allowing me to come, and inshallah, hoping to bring benefit to your life and your family life as well. So just a quick disclaimer before I start. I'd love to give people individual, one-to-one personal advice, but I can't because of a lack of medical insurance, because I'm not your personal doctor, as much as I'd love to. So that's one thing. The second thing is that before you make any changes, you have to consult with your own GP, your own doctor, your own physician before you do anything. And that's because if you're on medication or you have certain medical conditions, you have to calibrate what you learn from here with your own doctor. So let's crack on, inshallah. So there's certain elements of well-being, and you'll understand over today and next week, inshallah. There's not one thing that will make you feel healthy in your element. It's a number of things, okay? In no particular order. It's having a super rich nutritional diet. It's doing regular physical activity. It's emotional regulation, which is your mental health. Really important to calibrate that. Spiritual growth. That's my additional bit that I've put in. I'll explain why that's important in a second. Sleep is really, really important, which I'll get to in the mental health one. And avoiding the obvious one, avoiding substance misuse. So alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, vape now included. So it's not one thing that will make you feel better. It's all of these 6 elements that will make you feel like you're in your element, that you'll feel healthy, you'll feel alive. And for those of you that feel like you've just gone too far, your health's you're not in a good place, your health is not in a good state, it's never too late to reset your body clock. It's never too late. Just have a guess, how many weeks do you think it takes for your body to start calibrating and repairing itself when you start on the healthy flex? Just have a guess, how many weeks does it take? 3, you're nearly there. It takes 3 weeks, that's it. Just 3 weeks. And then just have a guess, how many months does it take before you start seeing significant changes in your health? Just have a guess. 3. 3 months, that's it. And proof of it is if you, when in Ramadan, if you go back to Ramadan, within a week you start to feel good. Agreed? Yes or yes? It's true, right? So if the point is that it's never too late to reset. So just to give you a bit of hope, 2 weeks ago, one of my patients who has diabetes, and in my practice we give patients a choice. What do you want? Do you want medication or do you not want medication? Do you want lifelong lifestyle change or do you want lifelong medication? Don't put me on any drugs, doc. I don't want any drugs. I said, fine. He weighed 160 kilograms. His diabetes was out of control. His cholesterol was sky high. In 3 months of a lifestyle program that I put him on, bitawfiqillah, it's nothing to do with me, but it's tawfiq from Allah, enabling grace. He lost 31 kilograms in 3 months. His diabetes reversed, so he went from being diabetic to no longer being diabetic. And his cholesterol went from 6.3 to 4.1. There's no drug on the planet or drugs on the planet or medication that will do that. So it's never too late to reset, and you have to believe that. So the main impetus of me doing this, I started this 3 years ago, just before COVID hit. And then there was more of a reason for me to do this when COVID, just took over the world. What we saw is that The Asian community, the Afro-Caribbean Asian community, were hit pretty hard in terms of numbers of people being infected, and also in terms of proportion of people dying as well. So when I looked into this, it's pretty tragic statistics. 50% of us adults and 40% of our children are overweight or obese. Okay, that's a bad statistic for the Muslim community. Okay, 50% of us adults, and let's just say 50%, because 40%, 50% is neither here or there. So 1 in 2 of us are either overweight or obese. We're at the highest risk of developing diabetes or heart disease. About 15% of us have diabetes, as in us, as in Muslims, okay? It's about 25% of us, so 1 in 4 have a form of heart disease. I guarantee you, each and every one of you knows somebody who has diabetes or has had a heart attack or a stroke. Agreed? It's true. We all know somebody, okay? And believe it or not, the capital of diabetes is India in the world, okay? And we don't need to go on about COVID, because we all know. But obesity is a massive risk factor. Now, what I do want to say is, look, COVID isn't a life, and it hasn't gone away. Okay, so COVID isn't a lifelong disease. There's multiple reasons why we were affected and why it happened what happened. But I'm just trying to do my bit and help where I can, because what we do know is that, look, obesity or being overweight, regardless of how old you are and whatever the medical conditions a human being has, it puts you at a massive risk of ending up in hospital, in ITU, and actually dying. So if that's just for COVID and what happened, what about all other illnesses like flu, pneumonia, and so forth? And the reason being is that if somebody has, and you can apply this to any illness, not just with COVID, you can apply this with any illness, any infection. When somebody is overweight, your lungs are already on the back foot. They're working harder than usual. Your heart has to work harder than usual. So it's like double whammy. And then you put in the problems the illnesses that come with obesity, such as heart disease, kidney function disorder, diabetes, and so forth, high blood pressure. You're on the back foot. It's just 10 times harder to fight a disease process, and that's why it's so important to address when 1 in 2 of us are actually overweight or obese. And so the elephant in the room wasn't COVID when it happened. That wasn't really the problem. The problem was actually our health, because those that were actually in good shape in terms of proportion, they actually did really well. So why is all of this important? It's really important to know why, and then when you know why, and remember this with anything in life, when you know why it's important to understand or do something, the how to do it becomes 10 times easy. You following me with that so far? When you understand why, how becomes 10 times easy. Look, having an illness, being ill, having a disease, lifelong disease, being overweight or obese, or having poor metabolic health, which I'll get to, or chronic inflammation, which I'll get to, it affects your physical state. It affects your mental state. You don't feel good psychologically. Ask anybody who has an illness. Psychologically, they don't feel good. And for us, you don't feel good spiritually. Remember, if your body is in good shape, it will show up in every single sphere of your life. It will show up in your career. It will show up in your schooling. It will show up in your studies. It will show up in your madrasa or your darul ulum. It will show up in your religion. It will show up everywhere. And that's why it's really important to be in good shape. Now, a lot of the time when I deliver this and when I talk to my patients, they just say, it's too late, doc, I'm just too far gone. I can't change. If you look at the word impossible, it spells I'm possible. And if you just rub out the I am, it's possible. There's nothing in terms of your health that is impossible. Allah's given the body an amazing capacity to reverse illness. And to be honest with you, anything is possible from when it comes to our Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing's impossible. And remember, change is a process, okay? It's not one thing. It's not like you go to the gym for 2 hours and then you look in the mirror and then nothing's going to change like that. It's a process. It's not one magical event that's going to happen, or one super fast that you do in summer and you're going to lose loads of weight. You have to approach this as a lifelong change for it to work. And I can't tell you when you're going to get in good shape, but I know you will. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, if you stick with what I'm going to go through, inshallah. And essentially, this is your choice. You either approach a healthy lifestyle flex lifelong, or you're at risk of illness, and when you're diagnosed with an illness, I'm not, obviously you think I'm a doctor, I'm not anti-medication at all. When it needs to be prescribed, I prescribe it. But if you have an illness, don't fall into that trap where, okay, I've got tablets now for this and that's it, this is the end. You actually have a choice of potentially reversing disease through lifestyle changes, and that's the choice that we're giving our patients. And what you've got, it's not patients' fault, it's our fault as doctors, because we've created this narrative. Now, when you go to a doctor with a problem, what do we do? You have an illness, what do we do as doctors? Yeah, we just give you some tablets, and then Abdullah, he has high blood pressure, give him some medication to get his blood pressure down, comes back to see me in 3 months. What happens to his blood pressure? It's still up. What do I do? I give him some more. And he's like, oh, mashallah, what a cha, right? He gets more, and then he comes back 3-6 months after, nothing's changed. I haven't told him why his blood pressure's up or what he can do about it himself. And he comes back, his blood pressure's still up. What do? I give him more, give him another one, and so forth, right? The problem is that we as doctors, we've created this notion that, it will cause you to live forever if you have loads of it. And you've got loads of people who are quite happily in this queue of, let me just go and get my meds from my doctor and I'll be fine. And you've got very few who are on the lifestyle queue, and it's our fault, but we're trying to change the narrative a little bit. So let's start. Okay, so a lot of people get offended when I talk, especially Gujaratis. They get really offended when I talk about food. But ask yourself some hard questions, okay? What is your relationship with food? Okay? It's a question you want to ask yourself. What's my relationship with food? Is it healthy or unhealthy? And the litmus test now, for those of you that are looking at this picture, or those of you that are listening at home and seeing this, if your mouth is watering when you see this doner kebab, you've got a bad relationship with food, okay? You should look at that and go, that is disgusting, man. Right? But what's your relationship with food? And it boils down to one thing. Do you eat to live or live to eat? I'll say that slowly. Do you eat to live or live to eat? And what I tell my patients, Muslim or not Muslim, there's a fine line with food. The purpose of food is for us to function. Agreed? Yeah? It's to function. It's to just be able to, keep our back straight, do our job, right? One of my friends in Leicester, and I'm proud to say, alhamdulillah, that he's my friend, Mufti Muhammad ibn Adam, he's Mana Adam's, one of his youngest son in Leicester. He said to me once, and mashallah, you look at him, he's 45 years old, he's in good shape, mashallah. When I was talking about food, he said, I don't eat because of lazzat. That's the fine line. Okay? I don't eat because of lazzat. I eat because I need to function, and when I'm full and I've got my energy, I stop eating. And he has a solid, super disciplined diet, mashallah. Sometimes we share pictures of what we had for breakfast. But there's a fine line that I tell my patients, Muslim, non-Muslim, and that line is lazzat. That if you're eating for pleasure, you've crossed the line a little bit, and that's where it becomes unhealthy. And what a lot of us don't know, and if you can read this book, it's called Food Junkies, Vera Tarman from Canada. She talks about how actually a lot of us are addicted to foods and we don't realize. Have any of you been in a situation where you've had breakfast at, 8 o'clock, and then 10 o'clock you're just, going into the cupboards and just putting stuff in your mouth and you don't know why? Anybody? Yeah, you're all laughing, so that means you do that, right? Or after you had your evening meal, you go into the cupboard and say, I just put something in my mouth. That's signs of addiction. When you want something that you don't actually need. Okay, because remember, food, it creates a sense of pleasure, doesn't it? They say, bahut maza aata hai when I eat this. They do, don't they? So the same chemicals that are released for pleasure when you do anything pleasurable, it happens with food as well. And so a lot of us actually eat when we don't need to eat because we're actually addicted. Lots of discussion. This needs more time, but if you want to scratch the surface, take a look at this book. And essentially the key message that I want to give for today, obviously think about that question, what's my relationship with food? But if you're going to remember anything from today, just remember one thing, okay? Two things, sorry. One, know what you're eating. Know what's going into your mouth. And number two, eat less and eat right. Okay? Eat less, but eat right as well. I'm going to teach you how to do that, inshallah. It's really hard to be healthy. Like, if you look at food adverts, okay, when was the last time you saw broccoli buy one, get one free? You don't see it, do you? You don't see any fruit offers, do you, or anything like that, or veg? You don't, because it doesn't sell. Okay, so it's always junk food. That's unhealthy food adverts. And when do when you go to Tesco or Asda or Aldi or Lidl, wherever you shop, when do you see offers on fruit or veg? The only time you see offers on fruit and veg is when it's going out of date, right? You never see it, right? We move less. Since 1980, our movement has dropped by 80% because of public transport, cars and stuff, and the nature of our jobs and so forth. In fact, my grandmother, my grandparents, alayhim wa rahmah, when they came to England in the early 60s, when you go meet your GP, you go for your first health check, right? And she went, and the doctor, who was an English doctor, he said to her, two things, Fatima, Bibi. He said, in England, he said, number one, he said, let go of your Indian diet. He said, it doesn't work in this country. A, it's cold, B, you don't move that much compared to India. And the second thing he said, Fatima Bibi, he said, have a glass of whiskey before you go to sleep. She just lost it after that. What sort of a doctor is this? But the first bit, he was right. And this is where Gujaratis and Asians get actually annoyed with me for saying this. But our Apna diet isn't the best of diets in this country because of the temperament and the climate. Because in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, there's a lot more movement, there's a lot more heat. It gets burnt off very, very quickly, very quickly. Here, it doesn't. And so if you look at our foods in general, there's a lot more fat, salt, and sugar that's put in there. And one of the reasons why sugar is put in there is to make it taste nice. And also remember, sugar, in any of its forms, is 27 times more addictive than cocaine. So they put that in there so that you keep on having more and more and more. Fast food, on the go. You just swipe right and you get it delivered. That culture is ruining health. And that's actually a big, big problem. Our portion sizes are getting bigger and bigger. And then when you go to the checkout, again, do you see broccoli on the checkout or apples or you just see junk, right? And it's just tempting to buy. And then confusing food labels. A lot of food labels are black. So it's just really, really hard to be healthy. Now again, this needs more time. But if you want a bit more information, then just take a look at these two books, Joanna Blithman and Felicity Lawrence. Really good eye-openers in terms of what goes in our food. And you'd be shocked. And it's important to know this. Like, for example, I'm a useless husband. I can't cook, okay? But sometimes when my wife is tired or, she's not well, for example, I'll go to a local halal food store, the one that I usually go to, buy some chicken burgers or, chicken kebabs, put it in the oven, give it to my kids. So one day I did that, and then as it was in the oven, I looked at the ingredients, and there was about 56 ingredients in this chicken burger. So let me ask you something. How many ingredients do you need to make a chicken burger? Like, what do you need? Chicken. So let's just say seasoning. Yeah, seasoning, and we'll group that all together. What else? Oil. What do you say? Flour and breadcrumbs. Anything else? Onions. Why has this got 56 different ingredients in there? That's quite bad, isn't it? Does anybody know what maltodextrin is? No? Do you know what E4271 stands for? No? If your mum was cooking at home and you say, Mum's going to put this E427 in your biryani, what would she do to you? And she'd be like, what are you doing? Get away from me. That's the point. Now we buy foods, no idea what's in there. Don't even look and don't even check. Really, really important. He's closed down now, but there was a brother who used to sell meat in a halal meat store, and his lamb meat wasn't lamb meat, it was horse meat. I know. Understand? It's just that it's really bad. So if this is what's happening, our brothers are doing this. I mean, God knows what's in half of our foods, but this is an eye-opener, real eye-opener. And remember why it's important, right? Because chemicals, it's not normal to have chemicals in your food. What happens in a nutshell is that you ingest it, the body goes, I don't know what this is, I don't know how to digest it. I've never seen this before, right? I wasn't designed for this. So then it gets sucked up into the liver. Liver says, I don't know what this is, I don't know what to do with it, I'm just going to convert you to fat. And then it gets pushed out, and it ends up in places where we don't like. Really, really, really important. So it's a good eye-opener. But essentially what it's about, what I'm trying to get to, where I'm going with this, is about making healthy choices, having a diet that's rich in protein, complex carbs, and healthy fats, which I'll come to, free from added sugar, simple carbs and processed foods. That's the blueprint, okay? Rich in protein, complex carbs, which I'll come to, healthy fats, which I'll come to, but letting go of anything that's got added sugar or refined simple carbohydrates or processed foods and junk. You do that and you will have really good health, okay? Now look, 60% of our food is processed. Now if you have a diet that's only 30% processed, it increases your chance of cancer by 20%. That's pretty scary, isn't it? 60% of our foods are processed. So just avoid, things that are microwavable, ovenable and stuff like that as much as you can. Save it for that day where, you're a useless husband, right, like me, and then you need to make something for your family. But generally, avoid processed foods as much as you can, even if it's 100% halal. Okay, avoid as much as you can. And sugar. Okay, sugar, you have to view sugar as poison. There's no other way. Okay, you have to view it as poison. It's highly addictive. Like I said, 27 times more addictive than cocaine. And unfortunately, it's in everything to make it taste nice. And I'll go through some charts in a second. And again, just like processed chemicals, sugar, if it's not burnt off, there's no nutritional value for sugar. It's just there for energy. If it's not burnt off within 2 hours, it gets converted to fats. It's just the way the body's designed, the way the body works. Okay? So really, really important to actually hammer home the thing about sugar. Let me show you some things, right? So I don't want to ruin anybody's business, right? But we have to speak truths, right? Yeo Valley, 0% fat, that's how it's sold. And people go, oh, it's 0% fat, it must be good for me. But actually it's got 5 teaspoons per 150 grams. Would you put 5 teaspoons in your yogurt of sugar? You wouldn't, would you? Okay, sorry lads, I know you like your Frosties and young kids, but per bowl you're adding 4 teaspoons of sugar. That's the equivalent. So after what this is, after you eat all these things and it gets digested, okay? It gets digested. This is the amount of sugar that's released into your bloodstream. Look at Heinz tomato soup. I mean, you wouldn't believe it, would you? It's the equivalent of 5 teaspoons of sugar once it's broken down and digested. Coca-Cola. Would you put 9 teaspoons of sugar into a glass of water? You wouldn't, would you? Or your tea or your coffee. And so this is just scratching the surface. It's in everything. Now look at the next one, okay? This is where you're going to get offended, okay? But, sorry. If you look at the top left, is basmati rice, okay? So this is a plate of rice, which is a flat plate, a small amount, not our mountain-sized plates. You know that when we have our rice, we have like a mountain, don't we, right? This is a flat, small portion. After we've eaten it, the amount of sugar that's released after digestion is 10 teaspoons of sugar. It's quite a lot, isn't it? Look at potato. It's a vegetable, it's a starchy vegetable. After you've eaten it, and it's been digested, the amount of sugar that's released from that potato is 9 teaspoons of sugar. It's quite a lot, isn't it? Would you put 10 teaspoons on your rice? Are you doing that anyway? Okay. So that's a good question. It's natural sugar, yes. But too much of it is a problem. Okay? And I'll come to rules in a second, because I'm not saying it's impossible to have a no-carb diet. So it's all about having what's called a low-carb diet, which I'll come to. That's a really good question. But if you scroll down right to the bottom, look at broccoli. It's got no sugar in it. And neither has eggs. Okay? Or an apple, for example, it's got hardly any. Or peas. Look at the one below it where it's got Cocoa Pops. Sorry, lads. It's a grain, right? After you've eaten it and it's been digested, the amount of sugar that's released is 7 teaspoons. Cornflakes is 8. But if you look at, say, Special K, it's only 4, it's half. Now, you wouldn't believe that, would you? Look at the bottom right where it's got a healthy breakfast. So this was a doctor who developed diabetes up north. He said, my breakfast used to be a bowl of brown flakes, a glass of milk, brown toast, 1 slice, and pure apple juice. Who here has made their own apple juice? Hands up. Anybody here made their own apple juice? You haven't lived. You have. It's good fun, isn't it? Well, how many apples do you need to make 1 apple juice? Yeah, you need about 4 or 5. Yeah. Easy. So like 1 glass of orange juice is not 1 orange. It's about 6. One glass of apple juice is about 4 or 5 apples that go in to make one apple juice. It's actually tons of sugar. So our friend who's a doctor who developed diabetes, he said, I didn't realize I was having the equivalent of 16 teaspoons of sugar equivalent a day. Can you see how it's a problem? Okay? Don't worry, you'll see where I'm going with this. Actually, I guess a bit complicated now. What time for that one? So what happens is, let me skip this one. What happens is when you're accustomed to having a diet that's high in what we call carbohydrates, it's high in sugar. And let's go back to the beginning, okay? Take myself, okay? When I was young, what would I have for breakfast? Cereal, okay? It would either be Crunchy Nut cornflakes, Rice Krispies, Frosties, Cocoa Pops, whatnot, okay? What would I have for lunch? School, when I was a kid, what would I typically have? Sandwiches, okay? Sandwiches with what? Crisps or chocolate. And what would I have to drink? Juice, Coke, Pepsi, stuff like that, right? What would I have in the evening? Roti or biryani or rice? Aloo? Definitely. Yeah, fish and chips sometimes. Okay, can you see how my whole day is just full of carbohydrates? From the morning, cereal. They're all natural, but when you're having too much of it, so like all 3 meals, and for decades, this is what happens. This is where it gets scary, okay? That's why I'm hammering this point home. What happens is that your body releases, whenever you eat anything, everything's got sugar in it, like you said, naturally, right? Your body releases a hormone called insulin. Insulin is your hormone that's designed to reduce your sugar levels. It's designed to get it out of your bloodstream and into cells where you need it for energy, muscles, organs, brain, okay? When you have decades of being accustomed to having a diet that's rich in carbohydrates, your insulin then says, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to do this for you anymore. You're on your own, pal. And then what happens is you have higher levels of sugar in your bloodstream. Then what happens is that sugar, if it's high levels of sugar, if you don't do anything about it, it will kill you. So the body's mechanism is to then convert it to fat. Okay? That's one thing that happens. The second thing is that when you've got high levels of sugar, that hormone insulin is secreted even more. That hormone increases the conversion of sugar to fats and also makes you feel hungry. And you end up with a condition called insulin resistance, which is the bordering of diabetes, and something called metabolic syndrome, where you're in a state where your insulin is not working as effectively as it should. And it results in all of these things. It's linked with, so obviously it's going to progress to type 2 diabetes for obvious reasons, but it's linked with heart disease, 13 types of cancer, stroke, angina, neurological disease, even dementia, and for some of the ladies listening at home, polycystic ovaries. It's just the pathway for illness, okay? And that's why it's so important to address this. And so what you look at when I'm talking about metabolic health, it's not just about your sugar levels. It's about whether you've got high blood pressure, high fatty acids, which is the fat that's converted from sugars, and how big is your waist. Okay? That's the giveaway sign. If you find that your waist seems to be popping out, that's the sign that your insulin isn't working as well as it should or could, and you're having a lot of conversion of sugar into fat because your diet's high in carbohydrate. Do you understand that point? Yeah? Really, really important point. And the bottom line is this, is that it's sugar and high intake of carbohydrates that's making us big. It's not necessarily fats. Okay? So let's go back a little bit. What's your relationship like with food? Why do you eat? I don't want any answers. Just ask yourself, and ask yourself when you get home as well. Why am I eating? How much am I eating? How often am I eating? And then what am I eating? And then ask yourself this other hard question. Does food control me, or can I control food? Simple questions you just got to ask yourself. Why am I eating? How much am I eating? How often am I eating? What do I eat? And is it in control of me or not? So ask yourself these questions. You'll figure out the answers, but you have to be reflective in this. Okay, so let me give you some quick wins of how to make it work. Because a lot of people, when I get to this bit, they all say, what am I supposed to eat then? My patients say the same thing. What am I supposed to eat? You told me I can't have this, I can't have that. So let me give you a blueprint, okay? Number one, a lot of people mistake, so that my personal trainer taught me this. he is a convert. He's a boxer, and he got knocked out, and he thought that was it. And mashallah, he was a Christian, became Muslim. He's 52 years old. If you were to look at him, Afro-Caribbean brother, he's built as a brick. Mashallah, really, really solid, disciplined diet. He said this to me when we were training him years ago. He said, most people mistake thirst for hunger. They're not hungry, they're thirsty. That's number one. So if you aim to have about 1.5 liters of water a day, you'll feel less hungry. Number two, eat with purpose. Remember I said, why do we eat? Why do we eat? To what? Keep our back straight and function. That should be the starting point, not lazzat. And you'll find you'll eat less. Okay? And just try this. Just try having no more than 2 meals a day. Just try it. On most days I do this. What you do is you have a breakfast and have a good one. I'll talk about how to have a good one. And in the evening, have a good evening meal. And in between, if you get hungry, just snack on raw veg, low carb fruits or nuts. Okay? Proof that you can do it is what? Someone give me a shout out. Proof that you can eat 2 meals a day long term is what? Ramadan. You do it in Ramadan quite happily and you get on with life and no one's dropping dead. Agreed? So that means you can do it. And that's the reason why it's really, really important is because if you look at our pious predecessors, they used to say that the habit of the Anbiya was that they would only have 1 meal a day. The Anbiya, the prophets, would only have 1 meal a day. They said the Salihin, the pious, they would have how many? 2 meals a day. And I will not say what they said about those who have 3 meals a day. I'll let you find it for yourself in the Ihya of Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah. And then so it's like, okay, what do I eat? So go for this, okay? Go for protein-rich foods. And I'll go through what this is in a minute. Whole meal, slow-release carbohydrates. Okay? Slow-release carbs are called complex carbs. They stay in your system for a long period, you don't feel hungry. And go for what's called good fats, which I'll get to. Definitely avoid junk as much as you can. Okay? Avoid processed foods like I talked about. Avoid regular takeaways. Avoid foods that are sugar pumped. Avoid fructose syrup, any type of syrup really. And avoid, I told you Gujaratis don't like me when I tell this. Avoid trans fats and fried foods. My brother, when I was giving this talk, he was annoyed with me. He said, what do you mean, no more samosas? I said, air fry them. So what happens when you fry foods, that oil gets converted from liquid to solid. Rock hard to burn off. So avoid as much as you can. Yes, allow it for, when there's a gathering, when there's a celebration and so forth. You can have junk and ice cream and fried food, but it can't be regular in your house. You get that? It can't be a regular thing that, every couple of days you're going to do a fry-up. No. You have to, as much as you can, avoid this as much as you can, okay? And what are protein-rich foods? Okay, meat is great, okay? Have as much of it as you want. It's fine, it's not going to harm you. Okay, I mean, limit your beef, but lamb, chicken is fine. It has a lot of bad press, but it's actually very, very good for you. Okay, so have as much as you want. Fish.
Even injected chicken, when you get now?
Say that again?
Even the injected chicken when you get these?
What are these injected chickens? Who's injecting chickens around here?
To get weight.
Oh.
I've seen in.
So we get our meat from a brother who has a farm called Eden Farm. I think it's in Oldham. It's organic chicken, untouched. Alhamdulillah, it's really nice. Consider it. And it's expensive to eat healthy. I get that. But I'll give you an example. There was a young patient, Caucasian patient. He came to see me. He was losing his hair, and I did blood tests on him, and everything was okay. And then I said, "What do you use to wash your hair?" And he used this common, I won't say the name because I don't want to ruin anybody's business, a common product that lads use for washing their hair. I said, "This stuff's got tons of chemicals in there. Why don't you try this other brand, which is organic, chemical-free, more plant-based? But it's 4 times the cost." So I said, "How much is your phone per month?" He said, "I'm paying 80 quid a month for my phone." I said, "What does your phone do?" £80 a month for a phone? He said, "Yeah." I said, "Look, drop it to, whatever your, gigabytes you get or whatever, just drop it to 40 and you can get 10 bottles of this, which will last you at least a couple of months." He said, "You know what? You're right. He said health is wealth. You see that? So it's about making choices. Where are you spending your money? And if it means that actually more have to be channeled towards healthier, organic, unchemicalized, unprocessed foods, it has to be. Do you get me? Has to be. You understand? So meat, try and go organic as much as you can. Fish, it's fine. It's really, really healthy. Have lots of it. It's absolutely fine. Eggs, again, bad press. It will not make your cholesterol go up. It will make you fat. Don't worry. It's protein, full of vitamins. Just have it. Just go for it. It's fine. Okay? Greek yogurt, not Greek style yogurt. Don't let these companies fool you. Proper stuff. Okay? Greek style yogurt has got tons of rice starch in it, which is starch is what? Sugar, basically. Okay, to make it taste nice. Dal, we love dal, don't we? Right? Dal is fine. Have loads of it. It's fine. Quinoa. Anybody heard of quinoa? It's a type of grain. It's protein-rich and complex carbs. Stays in your system for a long time. Chickpeas, hummus is fine. Beans, most beans are fine. But again, organic or not the high-end stuff. Just look at the sugar content. Oats, to a degree, has got quite a bit of protein. It's also a carb as well. But they're the sort of foods you want to go for. Hands up. Anybody had fish for breakfast? Try it. It's absolutely delicious. Honest. First time I had it, without bread. So one of my favorite breakfasts is salmon, poached egg, spinach. Have it with a spoon, without any bread. Or double egg omelette. Have you heard of za'atar? Za'atar is a Palestinian herb. The Palestinians, Allah protect them. The Palestinians, they put it in their food when their children have exams because it's brain food. Double egg omelette with za'atar and mackerel, smoked. It's really nice. Anybody have ever had kebab for breakfast? It's actually, without bread, it's actually really nice. 2 lamb kebabs, homemade with veg. You will stay full for longer. You will. Jiwa.
But the kebabs and stuff, isn't that not overdosed with oil?
Yeah, so you control how much oil you cook with. Well, not me, but my wife type of thing.
The things that you just mentioned,
yep.
all of them are controlled with oil. They have oil inside them.
But so you can choose how much oil you put in. And a lot of these just need a bit of a sprinkle, more than anything else. But the point is that if you go for a protein-rich diet twice a day, breakfast and evening, it will stay in your system for longer. You won't feel hungry. Okay? And then carbohydrates. Remember, I've banged on about this, but I need to. Okay, there's 2 types. There's simple, which is the rubbish stuff, and there's complex. The simple stuff is used up very, very quickly. It's a source of energy. Once it's utilized, you get hungry and you start eating over and over again. If it's not burnt off, what happens to it? It gets converted to what? Fat, okay? That's the bad stuff. You want to go for the complex stuff. Broken down slowly, absorbed over time. Okay, so so remember this, right? I'm going on about it, no sugar, yeah? Just cut out sugar. Like I talked about, you'll head towards diabetes, it gets converted to fats, it's just pretty bad for you. I've gone on enough, actually. I'll say it again then. Okay, we've got too much of it in our diet, okay? It's in everything, okay? What's our diet consist of? Rice, roti, chapati, aloo, bread, naan, biscuits, cakes. Can you see how this got just too much in our diet, yeah? And then we don't exercise, so it's not burnt off. So you want to go for complex carbs. So you're going to go for grain, oats. If you want to have porridge oats for breakfast, it's fine. But don't put any sugar or honey on there. Okay, it's a complex carb. It's released over a shorter period. It's the equivalent of only having 4 teaspoons of sugar when it's digested and burnt off, but it stays in your system for a longer period. So oats are fine. Quinoa, again, another type of grain, is fine. Veg, have as much as you want. The more, the better. Okay? Fruits, if you're going to have fruits, have them, but limit the tropical fruits like banana, mango, pineapple, grape. Go for berries, citrus fruit. The citrus fruits and the berries more than anything else. Far less sugar content in them. Have them, but if you're diabetic, try and avoid the tropical ones that we talked about. And this is the bit where I'm going to try and help you because Apnas really struggle with this, okay? How do you tell an Asian not to have bread, naan, roti, rice? It's impossible, isn't it? You can't. Okay, so let me be gentle with you. If you can get rid of it from your diet as much as you can. If you can't, then just follow a couple of rules. Number 1, if you're going to have it, okay, fine, have rice, but only have it twice a week. Is that possible? Yeah? No, one brother's going, no chance. You know, last week I gave this talk in Sale, near where I live, to a group of to the Muslims there. One guy put his hand up and said, I have 25 rotis a week. So I can't do this. I said, okay, bye, listen. Why don't you have, you said roti, so rice, roti, or potato, the rules are this. Have it, but don't have it more than twice a week. Okay? That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, portions. The amount of rice that you have should be a quarter of your plate. And it should be flat, it shouldn't be a mountain. A quarter of your plate. Okay, and the rest is protein and veg. Again, same with aloo. If you're going to have it, small amounts, but no more than twice a week. Roti, use stone ground wholemeal flour. Okay, it's the least amount of carbohydrate that's in there. Or almond flour. Just don't use, the normal, the white flour that everybody uses, okay? Just try and limit it to no more than twice a week, but ask your other half to make your roti a bit smaller. Make the paratha a bit smaller, okay? Just basically downsize. That's what you want to do, okay? Downsize. And then when you eat, what do you eat? You eat with what? You eat with purpose. Okay, moderation. You don't cross that line of lazzat, that I'm eating because of pleasure. I'm eating because of function. So, okay, fine, limit it. And then on the days where you think, well, okay, I'm accustomed to having roti every day, because then people are like that. They have roti every day, they have to have it. They have rice every day, they have to have it. When I was doing this talk in Glasgow a few months ago, one brother came to me and said, I've had this conversation with my mother. She has diabetes and she has rice every day. And I said to her, it's not good for your diabetes. She said, I'd rather die than give up rice. So culturally, I get that this is part of our culture, because food's so important for cultures, right? But what I'm saying is limit it and have it no more than twice a week. Then think substitutes. So this is where it gets a bit funny, okay? Instead of naan, why don't you get or bread or roti or chapati or paratha on the days when you're not having it? Why don't you get a large green leafy vegetable and use it as a roti? My patients do this, my friends do this, I do this. You'll get over it after a week. This will now become your roti. And you won't feel bloated, you won't have wind, you won't have acid. You'll actually feel okay. So use a green leafy vegetable as a roti. For rice, you can buy broccoli rice, you can buy cauliflower rice. Fine chop your vegetables and imagine it's rice. And have it with a spoon like you're having soup. And if you do that for the other 5 days of the week, that becomes your rice. Again, it will work wonders for you. And instead of potato, have cauliflower. So put that in your salad instead. You won't miss it, I promise you. So they're quick wins for you, especially for the Asian community. But you want to think about perhaps maybe adopting another palate. So there's no harm trying other cultures' foods. Try it. You might like it. You might like fish for breakfast. You might think, I can't stomach that, but you might actually like it. You might like meat for breakfast, If you go to Mediterranean countries, this is like standard for them. So just have a think about maybe just swap, doing a couple of quick swaps more than anything else. And never have rice, roti and aloo together. Never. Never have rice, roti and aloo. And if you're going to do that, honestly, go for a run for about an hour, non-stop, for you to burn it off. You have to, okay? Really important. Okay, bottom line is look, avoid junk, and you know what that means, and avoid, limit your carbs. Look, there's more evidence that if you reduce your carbohydrate intake, more scientific evidence that if you reduce your carbohydrate intake, you'll have far more weight loss in compared to a low-fat diet. Far more. And my patients are proof of it, okay? Far more. Within 10 days of stopping processed foods, you will lose 1 kilogram. 10 days, okay? Within 10 days of going on a low carbohydrate diet, you'll lose 2 kilograms. Within 10 days. And I remember my patients, one guy, he lost, mashallah, 31 kilograms in 3 months on a low carb diet. Okay? Really, really important. Now, if you're interested, take a look at this. Take a look at Dr. David Unwin, who's a diabetologist from Southport. Really, he's a guru when it comes to this. And take a look at Michael Mosley's 8-week blood sugar diet. There's a recipe book with it. If you want ideas of what do I eat, there's a recipe book that comes with this. You follow this program, you'll find that you'll lose weight drastically. Anybody who's diabetic, don't do this without seeing your GP because you need to change your medication. Take a look at Levels Health. It's got 110 foods that are not going to spike your sugar levels. Okay? There's plenty of foods out there that you can eat instead of roti, rice and potato. Loads, and cereal. If you're interested, take a look at these two books by Robert Lustig, very famous endocrinologist, who's big on this when it comes, especially for children, about looking at processed foods and sugar. It will open your eyes a little bit. Take a look at the Payopi diet by Asim Malhotra, who's a famous cardiologist. He's a Manchester lad, but he lives in London now. And Ronesh Sina, who's an American doctor. He's got more quick win swaps for Asians for roti, rice and potato in that book as well, if you want to take a look at it, because we don't have time to go through so much. Okay, quick note on fats. The green bit is fine to have it. So cooking olive oil, I bet some of you don't cook here, do you? Like me. But olive oil, but not deep fried, okay? Not high heat, okay? So olive oil is much better than the other oils. Salmon, well, deep cold water fishes. Salmon, non-tin tuna, mackerel, sea bass, absolutely fine, have tons of it. The tree nuts, almond, walnut, hazelnut. It's fine to have it in small portions. Avocado, these are good fats. You need these fats for energy, healthy heart, healthy blood vessels and so forth. Completely lose all the, what my patients call good stuff. Honestly, comfort foods. But if you're going to have it, save it for the celebrations. Honest, don't be accustomed to it. And you know what will happen to you, Bayo? When it's Eid, and I've got so many nephews and nieces, mashallah, there's 11, and they all want to bake when it's Eid. And what do they bake? Just junk, right? But I'm going to eat it because it's Eid. But I can't stomach it. Because you get so used to not having anything, this isn't good. You actually start feeling sick quite, and then limit the one that's in between. So the butter, the cheese, the heavy creams, limit it as much as you can, okay? But that's all you need to know about fats. There's no hard and fast rules with it. And eventually your plate should look like this, okay? Eventually your plate should, like, notice two things about this plate. Number one, what have you noticed? The first thing you've noticed, what have you noticed?
No sugar.
That's a good point, I didn't notice that. What have you noticed about this plate apart from, hardly any sugar? It's colourful. That's the point. You understand? The more colour you have on your plate, the better it is for you. Half of it is fruit and veg. Okay? A quarter protein, quarter whole grain, slow release carbohydrates if you want it. And what do you notice about the fluid? It's water. Okay? It's water. Any ulama here, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we studied the Shama'il of the Prophet ﷺ with our shuyukh, the Prophet ﷺ generally only had two beverages, water and milk. That was it. He wouldn't drink anything else. And so this is what your plate should look like. So that's number one, it's colourful. Number two, have you noticed it's flat? Yeah? It's a flat plate. It's not a mountain. Right? That's what it should look like in the end. But this is us, isn't it? Like we just and this is where, look, Muslims, there's a spiritual realm to eating as well. And honestly, our Prophet ﷺ was a genius when it came to medicine. In everything he was. And one of the things that he said, according to the hadith, narrated by Imam Tirmidhi, that مَا مَلَأَ ابْنِ آدَمْ وِعَاءً شَرًّا مِنْ بَطْنِهِ, that the son of Adam cannot fill a vessel worse than his stomach. Very famous hadith. It's enough for the son of Adam to have just a few morsels to hold his back straight, to be able to function. Okay? This is prophetic advice. فَإِنْ كَانَ لَا مَحَلَ لَهُ, and if you can't do that, فَثُلُثُ لِلطَّعَامِ ثُلُثُ لِلشَّرَابِ وَثُلُثُ لِلنَّفَسِ. So 1/3 for food. You've heard this, haven't you? It's a very famous hadith. 1/3 for food, 1/3 for liquid, 1/3 for air. Now listen to this. Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah in the Ihya, he talks about this hadith and he said, actually, when medicine was being taught in Baghdad about 1,000 years ago, medical schools were where? They weren't in England, America, they were in Baghdad and Samarkand and the Muslim lands. And this Christian scholar came to study medicine in Baghdad and he read this hadith and he said, verbatim, he said, مَا سَمِعْتُ كَلَامًا أَعْجَبَ عَنْ هَذَا. I've not heard of any speech more amazing than this, عن قلة الطعام, on how to reduce your food intake. هذا كلام حكيم. This is the speech of a genius. This was who? A Christian scholar. Now fast forward 1,000 years into my practice. When I started doing this 3 years ago, my colleagues were talking about what I'm doing with the Muslim community and the BAME community. And one of them said, your prophet talked about food. I said, he talked about everything. So what did he say about food? And I said this. And she nearly fell off her chair. He said that. She said, if the whole world just did, so you understand, did amal on this hadith. She didn't say it in those words, but to the effect. If the whole world acted on this statement of the Prophet ﷺ, she said, no one would have a problem. And these are two people who are not part of our faith but recognize the inherent genius of the Prophet ﷺ. Now look, it's winter months, okay? What time does Fajr start here? 6 o'clock, yeah? And what time is Maghrib? 4:10? Well, it's not even a fast, is it? It's not, is it? It's an early breakfast, late lunch. Do it often. If you don't eat, if nothing goes in your mouth for just 8 hours, you fat burn like no tomorrow. Push it to 12 and 14 hours if you can, a few times a week. But if you just don't eat for just 8 hours, you fat burn like no tomorrow. Your cell repairs like no tomorrow. Just read it for yourself. There's tons of benefit. It's not just for Ramadan. It improves your blood sugar levels. Your blood sugar drops, your cholesterol drops, your blood pressure drops, your weight drops, your inflammation drops. It improves your memory, concentration, delays aging. Proven. It delays aging. You look younger for longer if you fast. So consider it. Twice a week, Monday, Thursday, if you can, any day, any 2 days of the week. Ayyam will be 13th, 14th, 15th of the month. Encourage yourself to do this regularly. The 9 days of Arafah, 6 of Shawwal, 2 of Muharram. You know, if you do that regularly, you fast 40% of the year. It's a win-win situation. It's just, you know, this time of the year is perfect. Just watch your health improve. But do it properly. Like, when you have your sehri, stick to this program. When you have your iftari, don't eat as if you've never seen food before. Yeah? That's the key, because the proof is, if you look at the studies of Muslims, in terms of Ramadan, weight goes up because we eat as if we've never seen food before. Okay? But if you stick to the types of foods that I talked about, protein rich, no refined carbs, no added sugar, complex carbs, you'll be fine, inshallah. Okay, so quickly, because Isha's going to be soon. So remember, you know, if you're thinking about being in your element, 80% of success is dietary, 20% is physical activity. You can run all you want, but as Dr. Asim talks about in his Biography Diet book, you can't outrun a bad diet. If you have a bad diet, you can run as much as you want, your health's not going to improve. And neither is your weight going to drop either. So it's really important to do it in unison, okay? So again, I ask a lot of questions. Ask yourself this question, are you active or inactive? Simple question. And I don't mean busy Asian syndrome. What's busy Asian syndrome? Just running around, right? And does it mean that you're physically active? Okay? Ask yourself a serious question. Ask yourself, what am I? Because look, the proof is in the pudding. 1/4 of us are not physically active in this country. And men spend an average of 6 hours total, okay, on both weekdays and weekends doing nothing. Why is that? What do men do doing nothing? What are we doing? In front of the TV, watching sports, glued to our phones. Okay, so we don't move. So what happens is when you don't do physical activity, you end up in the negative cycle. That when your muscles, if I have my arm in a sling, what happens to the muscles? It atrophies, thins. It's harder for me to lift things because I feel weaker. Same thing with your legs, with your whole body. If you don't exercise, you feel weaker. Then what happens is when it's time to do exercise, your body needs a bit more oxygen than usual, a bit more glucose and sugar than usual to get the muscles going. So it becomes harder. You feel breathless and your muscles hurt. Psychologically, what do? You give up. Because that's the nature of the human body. When something's painful, we go into survival mode and we don't want to do it. Okay? And then it just becomes a spiral negative cycle. Okay? This is the other problem. We're glued to our phones. It's literally stopping us from, it's paralyzing us. Okay? Why is it so important? Okay? Now let me tell you why. Look at this. If a human being regularly is physically active, it reduces all causes of death by 30%, just by being physically active. It reduces your risk of heart disease by 35%, diabetes by 40%, colon cancer 30%, sisters listening at home, breast cancer 20%. Reduces your risk of depression by 30%. It's magic. I've got a patient, he went from, happily married, Allah save us from this, his wife had an affair, divorced, went from a beautiful house to a small just looking at four walls in a small flat, wanted to kill himself. He was suicidal. He said, there's no point in me living anymore. Desperate to not go on medication. So I said, fine, but you have to do something. Do you want to see a therapist? I said, okay, why don't you take up running? He was like, what? I want to kill myself, you tell me to run. It's like proper Daily Mail stuff, that, isn't it? Doctor tells suicidal patient to run. And I convinced him to run. Allah convinced him through me to run. And when he sees me now for his follow-ups, he says, if I didn't meet you, I'd be dead. If I didn't meet you, I'd be dead. It's from Allah, it's not me. I was like, why? He said, this keeps me alive. He went from 0 to running 12K 3 times a week. In no time. And he said, this keeps me alive. It naturally reduces endorphins. Reduces, older people, it reduces your chance of a hip fracture by 70% because your bones are naturally stronger the more physically active you are. And actually, the older people, reduces your risk of dementia by 30% just by being active. By being physically active, your risk of dementia drops drastically. Let me ask you a question. If this was a tablet and I said to you, you take this and your risk of dementia drops by 30%, would you take it? You would, wouldn't you? Without a shadow of doubt. Take this, it reduces your risk of diabetes by 40%. Would you take it? You would. But you've got to view physical activity as a pill. That's how you've got to view it. It's a prescription for me. Okay, I've got to speed up with this, okay, because I'm a bit slow today. When you're physically active, your body needs to utilize, it needs energy, and it utilizes that sugar that's in the bloodstream a lot more effectively. In other words, your blood sugar levels drop, and your insulin works better. If you look at heart, okay, heart's a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. It strengthens your heart muscle. It reduces fat. It declogs arteries, reduces your blood pressure, and ultimately reduces your risk of heart attacks and strokes. If it was a drug, exercise, would you take it? You would, okay? Arthritis, there's proven benefits that actually the more active you are, within reason, the more active you are. Because what happens to, when someone's diagnosed with arthritis, what do people do? They just freeze. It's my arthritis, I can't do anything. Well, actually, the evidence shows that if you keep active, you don't just have wear and tear, you have wear and repair. And the evidence is that your pain reduces, your stamina improves, and you actually start feeling better and have a better quality of life. Does it help with your mental health? Absolutely, 100%. Reduces stress levels, helps you sleep, helps your mood, helps your concentration, lifts your self-esteem, you start feeling good about yourself, and also reduces the symptoms of depression as well, because it's a natural way of releasing those happy hormones. All my patients, it's part of their prescription. You have to start exercising. Have to, and it works, okay? It improves your memory, improves your sleep, repairs cell damage, and improves your concentration. You ask anybody who goes to the gym regularly, do they feel alive? The answer is yes. Ask anybody who regularly feels, if they feel alive. It's really, really, really important. If you want more information, read Spark, really good book about the science behind why it's so good for your brain. If you're like struggling at school, for example, or in work, you just can't break through, or you're struggling with getting tasks done, honestly, start exercising. Go on a low-carb diet. Stop eating junk. Just watch your brain improve. Okay, so then a lot of people say, well, okay, doc, you've convinced me. What do I do? Okay, really simple. All you've got to do is 150 minutes a week, which equates to 22 minutes and 30 seconds a day, which equates to just walking to the masjid maybe 5 times a day if you can make it to the masjid 5 times a day. Or 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. And so what I tell my patients is, I don't have 20 minutes. I said, okay, people who exercise and who are in good shape, do they have more time than you and I? What's the answer? No, they don't. They have 24 hours in the day, just like you and I. They have the same amount of time, but why do they do it? Because it's a must. And that's what you have to adopt in your life. This is a must for me now. I have to do it. And if you don't have 20 minutes in the day, get up 20 minutes earlier. Or get up 20 minutes earlier, get up 10 minutes earlier, and sleep 10 minutes later. You've got 20 minutes in your day. You've got to really work out your schedule to make this work. So all you've got to do is 150 minutes a week, which is 22 minutes of walking a day. That's it. Twice a week, do something in terms of strengthening exercises. Do some weights, do some yoga. Instead of taking the car to shopping, walk and carry your bags home. That's enough. That'll do. And minimize the amount of time that you're spending sat down. So we have this rule at work. Well, I try to do it anyway. Is every 45 minutes just get up. Every 45 minutes just get up and go for a walk. So you're not sat down all day basically. So it's not hard. There's no hard and fast rules. And again, what counts? Like we talked about it: walking, jogging, swimming. Do they have swimming? Do they have men's only, women's only in Blackburn? They must do. Yeah, everybody has it now. Mashallah, this country is very accommodating. Alhamdulillah. So go for it. Cycling, hiking, gardening, any type of sports, running. Have you heard of HIIT exercises? Joe Wicks, who started it off. Just some of the stuff that he does is brilliant. Anything that counts as hoovering, right? But go for it. Okay, anything. Just the point is do something. Okay. A couple of ideas. Commit to a gym. Do they have men's only here? Men's, yeah, good. Yeah, commit to a gym then. Men's only, and for the sisters. If you can't, you're gym shy like me. Just buy some equipment for home. But then commit that no matter what, every day or every other day, I'm going to do this X, Y, and Z. Create groups. Like there's loads of massages and community groups that have walking groups, swimming groups, cycling groups, hiking groups, martial arts, football. When I drove here, I saw a bunch of young Asian lads, and there was an elder there. It looked like it was a football club. But just commit to something basically, and try and do it with other people, because you're more likely to engage when it's in groups. It's really hard to do it on your own. Really hard, unless you're that sort of a personality. But it's generally really hard. And for sisters, brothers and sisters, those who are married, work as a team. Okay, work as a team. It has to work both ways. You have to make time for your other half as well. So remember, our mothers, they're the first madrasa for our children, agreed? They're the first, right? But in order for our mothers to be able to function optimally, they have to be in good shape, right? They need time for that. They need time for that. My family, my wife has a set time for her exercise. It's in our schedule. It has to be there. And one thing that's really important is that life cannot be just for cooking and cleaning. That can't be their life. You understand? So free up time for them, and sisters as well. Free up time for your husbands. Let them schedule that in. That this part of my week is for my exercise. And so try and make it work for both of you, because when you're both in good shape, it will show up in your relationship as well, and with your children. One of our teachers, he used to say to us, complete each other, don't compete with each other. That's all you have to do. It's not a competition. Just complement each other. The point is do something, okay? But to help you, people say, I don't have time, okay? To help you understand this, you do have time. You don't have any barakah in your time. You understand the difference? What's barakah in time? What's barakah in time?
Do more things.
You can do more things in a short space of time. What creates barakah in your time? Allah creates it. What's the strategy? Minding your own business. Minding your own business. Okay? Minding your own business is one of the biggest things. كَرِهَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ قِيلْ وَقَالْ وَكَثْرَةُ السُّؤَالِ وَإِضَاعَةُ الْمَالِ. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah tests for you. قِيلْ وَقَالْ. Did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? He said this, she said that, this happened, that happened. Waste of time. Absolute waste of time. And in the Shama'il, the Sahaba said, Prophet ﷺ, وَتَرَكَ مِن نَفْسِهِ ثَلَاث. 3 things he just didn't do. The first one, mira', jidal. He never argued, never debated. Just wasn't part of his makeup. Waste of time. We're debating all the time about everything, aren't we? And the second one, al-ikthar, which is translated as just wanting stuff. So when you just want, I want, you waste your time on this thing searching for it. You have everything that you need. You don't need to have that bigger this, bigger that, more shiny this, more shiny that. This thing needs to be in my wardrobe and so forth. The person wasn't interested. He was content. Waste of time. And then the third one, وَمَا لَا يَعْنِي. He just did not bother with things that did not concern him. مِنْ حُسْنِ إِسْلَامِ مَرْءِ تَرْكُهُ مَا لَا يَعْنِي. From the excellence of a human being's Islam is to leave what does not concern him. Mind your own business. What's the one thing that gets us tangled in all these 3 things? phone. Okay? That's how you get. So basically ditch it. Look, I don't do this to boast. I have never had a smartphone. I promise you I still have friends. Okay? I still have a social life and so forth. I have never had one, inshallah, I'll never get one. It's a complete waste of time. Okay? Obviously you're not going to ditch it, but at least limit it and control what you do with it. Okay, look, they're incredibly useful devices. They have enhanced our lives greatly. To be able to talk to your relative across the globe and see them is pretty amazing, right? If you get lost and you've got Google Maps, that's pretty amazing, right? Really, really, really useful devices. But sometimes access at your fingertips is just unintended consequences. Like, how many of us are glued to our phones? 40% of our time is on our phones or TV in a waking state. Adults spend an average of 8 hours on a screen outside of work. Children 6, outside of school. Right? Log on to social media every 2 hours for no reason. Check your smartphone every 12 minutes for no reason. Swipe over 2,000 times a day on average. It's mad, isn't it? That's insane, isn't it? Like, you're glued to this thing. It's highly, highly addictive stuff. And it equates to 5 years and 4 months of your life spent on your phone by the time you hit the age of 60. So let me ask you a question, okay? If you sleep 8 hours a day, you assume that you work 8 hours a day. How much of your life has gone? Sleeping and working. 2/3, right? So by the time you're 60, how much of your life has gone? 40 years. If you assume that the first 15 years of your life was just spent being a kid doing nothing, how much of your life have you got left by the time you're 60? How many years left? 5. You spent 5 years on your phone. You've given nothing to Allah. You understand? And that's why people say, they say, I don't have time to learn my religion. You're lying to yourself. It's the biggest lie. Control this or get rid of this and just see how much time. I don't have a television at home. I've never had one in my house. Well, alhamdulillah, I never had and never want to get one. I have bags of time. When I was telling some of my receptionists that you don't have a television, what do you do? I talk. What do you talk about? It's ajib. You understand? It just eats your time. There was a brother, mashallah. Just think about it. There was a brother in university, and he was the only one in his whole family who didn't memorize the Quran. So one of the shuyukh, he said to him, why don't you take a couple of months out and just do it? He did it in 3 months. This was a postgraduate individual. First lockdown, there was a young boy near where I live. He was 14 years old. He said, I got bored. So I just picked up the Quran and started doing hifz. How long did it take you? 14 months. Done. Do you understand? With another brother, he became Muslim, and in 1 year he learned Arabic. In what? 1 year. The next year become Hafiz al-Quran. These are people who don't waste their time. You know, people who are really like movers, shakers of this world. You know, those who are, making whatever, a tangible difference to the world, positive or negative. They're not sat on their phones, endlessly watching YouTube shorts or glued to Twitter. They're doing stuff with their lives. Just think about it. It's ruining us as human beings, separating us more than anything else. So if anybody's interested if you think I am addicted, I am glued, I've got this at home. It's a really good book, endless amount of fun. How to unplug yourself and your kids from, in fact, just a note here, actually, don't give your children a smartphone. Do not give them a phone. Don't have a TV in their room, don't have a games console in their room, don't do it. Do not do it. They're not ready to deal with this device. They're highly addictive. Highly addictive. If you're going to do it, if they're going to go on the laptop or their phone, it has to be in your presence. Has to be. And don't do this, but this is why it's scary, the internet. So my daughter had to do a project for Medina Munawwara. She wanted a picture of Medina Munawwara. So what do you do as parents? Okay, let's go on Google Images. I typed up Medina, and unfortunately it wasn't Medina Munawwara. It was something really just like, Na'udhu billah. I'll let you work it out, I don't want to say in a masjid. It's really risky. You understand? They should not have it and should be in your presence when they're watching TV or going on the internet or on their phones. And if they need it for school, because of school pickups or homeworks and stuff like that, you decide what apps are downloaded. You decide what games are downloaded. You tell them, I want to check your history. You're adults, you're their guardians, you're their protectors. You have to protect your children from these sort of things. Otherwise, you lose them. They'll spend more time on their phone than talking to you or looking at you. So just be really careful. And young people, it's not that your parents are being old or horrible to you, it's just because they care about you, that's all. So in summary, look, if you have a healthy self, like I said, if you stick to a really solid regime when it comes to food and you're physically active, you will heal thyself. Think about my patients. This year, alhamdulillah, about 70% of my diabetics, new diabetics, have had reversal of their diabetes within 3 months with no medication. Okay, people who have cholesterol levels yesterday I spoke to one of my patients. In 3 months, his cholesterol went from 9 to 6. 9 to 6 in 3 months without any cholesterol tablets. So the plan is keep going, we'll get it down to below 5, but we're not where we need it to be. People who have lost 20, 30, 40 kilograms in such a short space of time, that's a sort of flex you want to go on, okay? Because if you have a healthy self, you can have healing, okay? A couple of final thoughts, and then we'll finish inshallah, and I'll open the floor to questions. Remember that hadith that we talked about? The third. Just try it. If you want to eat, just try the rule of thirds, okay? It will help you inshallah. Take a look at the Prophet ﷺ. You don't need to look, you don't need me. You don't need to look at anything, just look at the Rasul ﷺ. If you look at how he sat like this, do you know why he's a genius for sitting like this when he ate? Because you're not crunched like this. It's when your GI tract, the whole of your esophagus, stomach, intestines are actually straight. You know when you're full. You can feel it. That's one of the reasons why he sat like that. Try it. Be accustomed to the dua before and after meals. Shaitan will not partake in your meal and you will feel full earlier and satiated. How did the Prophet eat? When he ate with his hands, what fingers and what did he use? Somebody show me. He did that. Can you overeat if you eat like this? It's impossible, isn't it? You can't overeat. That's another reason why he ate like that. And the Prophet rarely ate to his full. Rarely ate to his full. And he had no longing for food. Like zero longing for food. Aisha radiallahu anha, she said that, the first bid'ah, أول بدعة حدثت بعد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الشبع. The first bid'ah after the Prophet passed away was people were eating to their full. And then she said what happened then is that when people became full, they then became inclined towards the dunya. So the Prophet didn't have longing for food. In fact, in his time, he saw somebody who had a bit of a belly, and he said to him, if you didn't have that would be better for you. Umar radiallahu anhu, in his khilafat, there was a man who had a bit of a belly, and Umar came up to him and he put his hand on his belly and said, "What's this?" And then the man said, "Hada barakatillah." He said, "This is the blessings of Allah." And Umar said, "This is adab." You understand? This was the way of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then those who followed him. So, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he used to say that, for 12 years I didn't eat to my full. And his students asked him, why not? He said, because I grew up with people. In other words, the Sahaba. So he was a young boy, remember, when Islam came. He said, I grew up with Sahaba who preferred to remain hungry. His dad, Umar radiallahu anhu, would only eat 9 morsels with a meal. Max. 9 morsels, then I'm done. Max, that was his habit. And he would refuse to eat. So halwa? He would refuse to eat it when he was Khalifa. And they would ask him why. He said, until the fuqara of the Muslim world, everybody eats this. In other words, it's common food. I'm not touching this. Out of solidarity with people who are poor. That's adab at its highest level. Radiyallahu anhum jami'an. So, again, switch off your phones and start reading. It all boils down to lack of awareness of our aslaf. how our pious predecessors used to live. We have no idea how they chose to live and just read. So Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah, he's wrote the famous 40 hadith. Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali has done a commentary on that. Compendium of Knowledge and Wisdom, I think that's what it's called. So he's added 8 more hadith to make it 50. One of them is that hadith of the third. Just read that chapter on what our pious predecessors said about those who overrate. You don't reach wisdom, you don't reach your target of what you want to achieve out of life, you don't get spiritual openings. So just have a read. Read the Shama'il, the way of the Prophet, and read the biographies of the companions, read the biographies of the saints, and you'll find how they were, their lives were just super healthy actually when it comes to these sort of things. And a couple of last comments from our teachers that have taught us that if food isn't benefiting you, in other words, if you don't feel good when you're eating and it's not making you feel healthy and you're becoming unhealthy, you're either not eating halal, whether you know it or not. You're either not eating halal or you're not eating wholesome, tayyib, sunnah type foods. Or you're not eating in the prophetic manner. Just something to think about. And one of our scholars, when I read this, I was really amazed that إِذَا امْتَلَأَ الْبَطْنُ طَغَى الْجَسَدُ. This is like a principle with our ulama and sulaha, that when your stomach is full, you will transgress. You will start doing ma'siyah because you're just filling your nafs. Last one. Very famous statement of the Prophet ﷺ, Ibn Mubarak. This is his first hadith in his book Zuhud, doing without. نِعْمَةً مَغْبُونٌ فِيهِمَا كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ. That 2 blessings. Most people are just completely unaware of how amazing these 2 blessings are. In other words, they just disregard it. People, not just Muslims. Siha, one is health, and the other is faragh. Siha and faragh. Health and having free time. Just reflect. Reflect on these words of the Prophet. I think that's it. Yeah, that's the last one. So that's on physical health. Next week we'll talk about mental health. If you know anybody who's struggling with a mental health problem, do bring them along, because it's a little bit different to just chucking medication at them. And inshallah they'll take benefit. But remember, don't detach physical health and mental health. They go hand in hand. We'll stop there, inshallah. Any questions? No personal questions, yeah, just generic. Any questions? Yeah, you got some? Okay, so this is a question about blood pressure monitoring at home. Actually, it's a good thing to measure it at home. When you go to the doctor, you're kind of tense, aren't you? But if you check it at home, it's more accurate. So when you check it, any arm will do. It doesn't make a difference, left or right. Best time to do it is when you're most relaxed. When you're most relaxed in the morning and most relaxed in the evening, twice a day. Check it 3 times when you're relaxed, and jot down the lowest reading. And you do that for a week, and then work out your averages. If your blood pressure is above 140 on the top and 90 on the bottom, on average, then go and see your GP. If it's below that, it's fine. Inshallah, no more?
Doctor, you said no personal questions. What do you mean? You said no personal questions.
Yeah, so it's, when I do these things, people say, Dr. Saab, my cholesterol is 6 and my sugar levels are 78 and I'm on metformin and atorvastatin and this and that, and what do you think I should take next? But if it's generic, that's fine.
No, if someone has a high protein in their blood.
Someone's what, sorry?
High protein in your blood. What risk factors?
If you have high protein in your blood. So usually when you have high protein in your blood, usually there's a problem with either your kidneys or your liver's processing it. So again, that's a very specific question. Can't answer that without context.
So what's the best food for to reduce?
If you have high protein diet, so you have to limit your protein. So again, depending on what the cause is, there's grades of how many grams of protein you're allowed per day. But that actually depends on what's the cause of why you have high levels of protein. Does that make sense? But essentially what happens is you should limit it depending on what your clinical condition is. Yeah. But it's rare that, you know. It's more common to have low protein because of liver disease.
Once I went to the doctor and did blood test, he said you've got high protein and there's a risk of your kidney problem.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's 1 in 100 you can get blood cancer as well.
So do you mean protein in your urine?
Yeah.
Okay, that's different. So protein in your urine is because of a problem with your kidneys. So yeah, you have to limit your protein intake, but also, why is your kidney doing that? So sometimes that can happen because of diabetes, sometimes that can happen because of high blood pressure, sometimes that can happen because of a problem with the kidney in itself. When you correct those, your protein levels should drop at the same time. And then you can decide on how many grams of protein you can have a day.
That's it. I don't want to go into detail.
That's fine.
Thank you very much.
What's the correct amount of water? Is there a correct amount of water?
No, there's no correct amount of
Three
water
inches
here.
or 1.5?
No, so the Americans say have 2, we say 1.5.
1.5.
Yeah, is enough as a minimum,
Yeah.
which is about 8 glasses of these as a minimum. And if you drink tea or coffee, you need to have a bit more because tea or coffee is a diuretic. But water is magic. MashaAllah. Okay, that's namaz soon, inshallah. So next week it's going to be after Isha, but it's about mental health. If you know somebody who has a mental health problem, please do bring them, inshallah, they'll benefit. Stop there, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyina kareem.